Welcome to our Public Safety Committee meeting and our workshop on our open burning ordinance for the month of June. And as always, we'll start out with the invocation, which I will handle myself this morning. Let's pray. Praise God. Heavenly Father, we're so thankful, dear Lord, to have this opportunity to come together here today. Encourage our hearts and uplift us, direct us and guide us, and give us wisdom and understanding, patience. Help us, O Lord, to do the will of the people. Most of all, help us so that we would set a good example before all. Keep thy hand upon our public safety, Lord. Keep them safe and bless them. Watch over them so that we might be able to encourage them and uplift them for everything they do. We pray and ask all these things today upon thy holy name. Amen. All righty. As we had scheduled the workshop today on the outdoor burning, I'd like to call on our county attorney, Mr. Comte, if you will take the stand and explain the ordinance before us.
At the committee meeting on May the 7th, I was asked to go back and simplify the proposed ordinance, and a copy of it is in the materials. The proposed fire-free zones have now been taken out of the proposed ordinance. Where we found ourselves was the situation where we put in fire-free zones, but then we started looking at exemptions. And then that became rather complex, and it became more complex. So I was directed to back out and make the ordinance a more simplified version of what was being discussed at committee. So what you have in the materials is what laws are currently on the books in terms of outdoor burning regulation here in Horry County. And now it is simply tweaked some to note especially nuisance conditions that have been complained about, smoke, etc., clarify some terms, make sure that state law is set forth pretty specifically in the ordinance. And I have spoken with the chiefs, both our fire chief and chief of police. They have indicated that this is a workable document and that they can enforce and hopefully address the complaints that we continue to receive based upon the law as tweaked rather than a drastic modification of our currently existing law. And they have the enforcement ability to do that. And that's what is in front of the committee presently.
All right, so let's move on to public input, and then we'll call you back up and we'll have a committee discussion about it. If there's anyone here from the public, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. The green light will show. At the yellow light, you'll have 1 minute, and at the red light, it means stop. You run through the red light, and so if you get a citation, the chief's here. Oh. Good morning. Is there anyone from the public here that would like to speak on this subject of outdoor burning ordinance at this time? Yes, sir. If you'll step up and if you'll state your name, please.
Good morning. I'm Dave Dupree. I'm currently the president of the Longleaf Estates Homeowners Association. Longleaf Estates is off of Glens Bay Road in the greater Surfside Beach area. We're west of the township of Surfside Beach. Before the council again this morning, I think the first time I spoke on this issue was in 1981 when I had a similar representation for the Carapines Homeowners Association off Glens Bay Road. We've been discussing open, yard debris burning and so forth for as many years as I've been in Horry County. I'm not a local per se. I've only been here 38 years, but we continue to move along. In our neighborhood, it's a relatively old one in the Surfside area. The lots in that neighborhood are 3/4 of an acre each, many of them heavily forested and long needle pines. So we generate a reasonable amount of yard debris for burning during the fall months in Horry County and down in that part of the county. We're concerned that we would be enjoined from being able to burn under reasonable limitations and concerns, especially during the fall months. And our position on it, of course, continues to be we feel like we should be able to dispose of debris that's generated on our properties in a responsible manner on our properties. And we also feel like that if it needs to be significantly curtailed, then the county should take a look at doing that in conjunction with implementing some form of county-wide or at least by neighborhood-wide residential yard debris pickup curbside on a once a month, twice a month basis, like I've seen it done in Horry County. I grew up in the middle part of the state, Richland County, where residential yard debris burning curbside pickup was common. So my input is, please, as you consider these ordinances, don't do anything that damages homeowners of larger tracts or more heavily wooded tracts. And also, I would hope that you'd consider as one of the remediations to eliminate risk to life and property that some of the building codes for Horry County perhaps be investigated as well. I think of things like the Windsor Woods, was it, fire, and also the Barefoot Landing fires, both of which, by the way, were, big fires from the other side of the waterway. Yet I know a lot of this more recent discussion's been clamping down on, restrictions for the east side of the waterway, even though it seems like our big fires are on the west side of the waterway. But as we take a look at that, please take a look at building codes. There's some national building code guidelines that suggest that no combustible materials be allowed on the outside of a building, lower than 3 feet off of grade. And here in Horry County, with so many new communities springing up, targeting, potential retirees and so forth moving to the area, I certainly understand why building directly on slab is as popular as it is, not only for lower cost but also for access. But in the case of the Barefoot fire a few years back, the disaster there was slab construction, exterior combustible vinyl siding, directly down on grade with landscaping around those homes that incorporated pine straw as mulch. So that's my input to you. Please continue to deal with this responsibly. We had a voluntary meeting in our neighborhood with members of other neighborhoods around us a few years ago at the South Strand complex, and we worked out what we thought was a pretty good working solution where people agreed that we wouldn't burn on days that were too wet or days where the wind blew the wrong direction. I'm about to get a red light. I don't need a ticket, so I'm going to sit down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dupree. Anyone else here that would like to comment on this before we proceed with committee discussion? Once, twice, 3 times. All right, committee. We're going to open it up now. We have some extra council members here this morning, and probably Councilman Horry will be in here shortly. So we're fastly approaching a quorum. So the members that are not assigned to the committee, I would ask you to allow the committee members to speak first, and to remind you that you do not have a vote in this, and that you would limit your comments after the committee members speak. Okay, thank you. All right, who's up first?
Sure. Because we already do have the laws on the books, and that we want to enforce these laws, we started talking about creating our own laws. And we realized they were in conjunction with the state laws. So I like what Arrigo has done with combining and taking out a lot of this verbiage that was redundant, and we have to figure out how to enforce what laws are already on the books. Because I don't want to do something that then when the officers go to the site where there is burning, and then the person quotes one law and then the officer's quoting another law, it gets a little conflicting. We want to make sure that what we present and pass is in conjunction with state law. That way we can train one time only. It's what we're going to do. It's backed up by state law, and everything can be pretty well enforced, which is real important.
Anyone else from the committee? Ms. Crawford? All right, Mr. Worley?
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Well, my people in District 1 want something changed. Now, obviously, a lot of different situations around the county that we have to deal with. But at the same time, we have a hazard. I think it's a life safety issue, especially up in the Little River neck area where we have so much forest land. If we have a fire with the wind coming from the right direction, Mr. Chairman, we could have a catastrophe on our hands as far as loss of life. Wildfire is awful, as you know. So, I'm not, I don't want to overkill, but at the same time, I need some relief for those folks up there somehow, some way, so that they can go to bed at night and feel like that someone down the road a quarter of a mile is not going to burn their house down. Now, how we get there, I'm not sure, but I do believe that at some point in time, this council needs to act on something. And I understand what you guys have done, and I appreciate that, and I think you've worked hard on it. But at the same time, if this enforcement state statute guideline, that's something that can be reinforced, can be enforced out there, and we can make sure that these folks don't have a situation that the fire consumes them. I'm okay. But so far, I've been on this council and we've been dealing with this issue. Really, nothing's happened. So we need some way, somehow. And I think the biggest problem we're having is yard waste, and they're burning, they have burn barrels and they're burning in the barrels. If there's some way we can stop that, I think we'll be fine. But if we can't, then we have to put we have to put some stronger guidelines on so that it stops these people from just going outside and throwing a match down and having a huge fire and the smoke. I was over at one house, and now I'm not kidding you, inside the house, this was a fairly new home, probably 5-6 years old. Inside the house itself, the smoke was terrible, and that was inside. So it's something that's a nuisance from that point, but more than that, I think it's a life safety issue that if, in some areas, no problem. I understand that. The farmers, they have to burn. They have to burn their fields. And I understand that. But I don't see it as something we can treat everybody the same. It's in these areas where you have high density. It just does not make sense for people to go in their backyard and start burning. That's just wrong. And so how do we deal with that in the big picture of development? You know, if you're in the middle of a 100-acre property, you know, that's one thing to go out and burn your hedgerows, burn your wheat fields. But when you get into an area like Tidewater or some other areas in my district, it's just wrong. And you have people that they just won't be a good neighbor unless you make them be a good neighbor. And that's what it all goes back to, Al. It all goes back to doing the right thing and being a good neighbor. And some people they just won't be a good neighbor. They just don't care. Who cares? So those are the ones that cause all the problems for the rest of us. So I just want you guys to just remember that in drafting and ultimately making a recommendation to council, is that we need something in place so that these guys can go out and say, that you can't do that, stop. It's a nuisance. How do we get there? We have to work our way through it. Thank you.
Now, just some of your comments. I think we have addressed a few of those thoughts, especially about the proper things you can burn and how you burn them. And you have to call in to forestry to let them know you're going to burn. And back to what I said, training. If we train the officers properly, they can enforce just about anything goes on in a neighborhood, or on burning in a barrel, or trying to burn debris in their yard because they're too close to other houses. If the wind is too high, we're getting there. But you're right. We've got to be able to enforce. If we can't enforce, no one really cares. We need to know what we put in writing.
Yeah, and at the same time, you don't want to hurt folks that want to burn, and the community, and it's big enough, like I say, in a larger tract. I have no problem with that, none at all. But I can remember in years past where I live now, and I've lived all my life. You know, my dad would go back there and burn those fields off, and no problem. But if I was to go in my backyard right now and build and burn trash in my backyard, I'd get tar and feathered. Right out. So where does common sense kick in so that folks like the last speaker, they get what they want, and the folks and I just use that as an example, Tidewater, up in Little River Neck. The vegetation is very thick, and if we have a fire and the wind, like I say, the wind's blowing from the right direction, it's going to be catastrophic. And those people want something done. And I think we can ultimately, at the end of the day, come up with something that works for those folks and not bother the farmers and the other folks. I think we can do that.
Councilman Hardy's come in, and so would you like to say a word or two on this, Councilman Hardy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing that I was thinking is that we need to maybe come up with a program to work with the public safety and our other officers, that they're trained to deal with these situations. I mean, that's not something I would think that would be in their training package that we could get them to deal. It's like Councilman Worley said, it's really, neighbors trying to be good neighbors, and if you don't have that, that's where the issue comes in. And maybe we could get our public safety trained as to how to handle these situations.
Yes, sir. I would just say that, in looking at the ordinance, I think the committee's moving in the right direction. I think Councilman Worley brings up some good points in some of these areas. For instance, in my district, in Socastee, it's very high density, it's very urban, and I think that excess burning can be very problematic. Particularly when you take into account wind and all of that sort of thing. And so, in looking at the ordinance, I think there are certain protections in there for people who, for certain types of burning, like outdoor grilling and that sort of thing, those are exempt. And so, again, I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think that that this can be a good ordinance, and I think that that the intentions are well placed, and I believe that it will help us better protect, particularly people in subdivisions, high density areas, and we can always make it better as we move along. We can craft it and ensure that folks in the western part of the county, where an ordinance, a burning ban may not be as applicable, we can certainly craft it to ensure those folks are protected. Thank you.
Councilman Prince?
I have a couple of points, but one thing come back to my mind is the fire that went into Barefoot and burnt the houses. Is there anybody here that was on scene at the point before that fire ever got out of control? I don't know if we have anybody on staff or anything that remembers that very clearly. If we don't, my memory, we went out there, Horry County Fire Department went out there. I don't know where it was one time or two. That's going by memory. I guess the record should tell you exactly what happened. That fire, in my way of thinking, should have never got away from where it was started from. It didn't get put out properly. Well, it didn't get put out, whether properly or not. So that could have been stopped, I think. Like they call nipping it in the bud. And I don't know who in the world could have, I'm not trying to lay any blame on anybody, but it should have been taken care of. And that could have been prevented, I think. The one that we're talking about, the fire that burnt the condos and so forth, I don't know. That was here. I don't know if Mr. Tanner was here when that fire was out of control or not. But some of these things, if you get careless and you take for granted, they're going to happen. You got to stay on top of the fires and be sure they're out. Okay, and on another issue is who can write tickets, Mr. Attorney?
Both Horry County Fire Rescue and Horry County Police Department can write citations.
Horry County Fire
Rescue and Horry County Police Department, among other departments, are authorized under law, local and state law, to issue ordinance summonses.
Also the Sheriff's Department, too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when you say public safety, what is there anybody in the fire department?
Yes, sir.
Can write a ticket?
Yes, sir.
Can I write a ticket as a fireman?
No, sir.
Okay, well,
unless you're given specific authorization by the fire chief.
Okay, when the fire department goes out there and sees that there's illegal burning, okay, they're going to have to call a county police to come and write a ticket?
No, sir. The fire chief would have someone designated to be able to issue ordinance summonses.
Okay, because that has been a problem in the that I've seen in the area that I help serve and go to fires, that there's nobody there to write a ticket. And in most cases, you can explain it to them and it might not happen anymore, but we got a few people that will burn just, I don't know, it's like they're threatening or whatever. They just ain't going to listen to you. Because we have maybe 3 or 4 that we've been to their places. I bet you if you'll take the record, we've been to their places probably 10, 15 times in within a year's time. Same area, same person.
The chiefs should coordinate and designate an individual or individuals to issue those citations.
And as far as the DHEC regulations, there are things you can't burn and like household garbage and a few other things. They got the laws there, but you can't get a DHEC person to go out there and do anything. They're too busy getting involved in things that probably ought not to get involved in my opinion, and not there where we need them whenever they got the laws and they're not there to enforce them. So we need to figure out some way that when a fire department goes there, which you said we already have, so the regular firemen go and see that they violated the law. What do we do?
There would need to be a structure within the chain of command that would already designate an individual or individuals to issue citations, whether within the fire department or the police department. So if it was just a fireman on scene that sees a violation of the law, they would contact that individual or individuals to come to the scene and issue an ordinance summons if it's an ordinance violation.
Okay, then, and
Which
Mr.
it could be, and stuff, if I can add this, it could be a captain and stuff, battalion chief assigned instead of a chief, right?
Yes, sir.
And then how many tickets have we wrote for violations through the Horry County Fire Department system? How many have we wrote this past year, so to speak?
I'd have to have the chief answer that question. I don't know.
Probably
zero?
Probably zero and stuff, because the council is not really pushing an ordinance through and stuff to give the fire department and stuff instructions to, start enforcing.
And that's what we're here for now.
That's right.
We're here to correct these things and bring them to, and let's do something about things and not just like back and let things go.
Horry, so
Yeah, one other comment for staff. The fireworks ordinance that we have now that we pass in areas, say that's a no fireworks zone, how is that working?
Well, first of all, that's purely state law. There are fireworks-free zones that can be designated and extended into public lands surrounding those fireworks-free zones. But other than that, we are restricted from designating fireworks-free zones in the county for outlawing fireworks, because that is governed purely by state law.
Okay,
Does that answer the question?
So is there any way that we could possibly have, like, from time to time we have no burn days, no burn zones? Would we need to get the delegation and the legislature to amend that so that when you go into, and I'm just going to use this as an example, Mr. Chairman, okay? So when you go into Little River Neck, so when you get down, say, wherever, there's a sign, no burn zone. And that way, it doesn't bother the farmers out here in Conway or Aner or Loris. It just affects that one area. Why can't that work?
Well, that's
Does
what
that make too much common sense?
That's what we had been discussing.
I understand that, Arrigo, but I think what we did in the draft ordinance, we took it to another level. I think it was almost like a kill bill. It was a kill amendment. I'm saying something not that exaggerated, just something kind of simple. This area is a no fireworks area. Why can't we have this area as a no burn area? Why can't we have that?
Yes, yes, sir. And as long as there's a rational basis, because we have to, whatever we do has to satisfy constitutional challenge or constitutional muster. So there has to be a rational basis. If we do it in one area, there has to be a reason why we do it in one area as opposed to other areas. What the draft that I had presented originally to the committee designated everything east of the waterway. We could do it by major residential development to target those areas of the county with the greatest population density.
And vegetation, maybe.
It would have to be
hazard.
It would have to be some scientific basis or risk-based analysis of why we would designate certain areas of the county fire-free zones as opposed to other areas. We'd have to be able to distinguish.
All right. Now, how do we look at that possibility?
We could draft an ordinance, a council could pass an ordinance indicating that any area within a major residential development which represent the most densely populated areas of the county are fire-free zones.
How do you feel about that, Al? Something like that?
Look into it and say, well, it would help us and stuff to where if we had a GIS, map showing those areas.
Sorry. We already do have that map because we did it for the discharge of firearms. We already have an existing map.
So, if we can, let's please take a look at that and see if that's something that your committee and the council ultimately would go along with. But I certainly don't want to hurt the farmers. I don't want to hurt folks that are in areas like this gentleman that everybody wants to burn in a big area, and it's not a hazard. I have no problem with that. But in these high-density areas, i.e. Carolina Forest, down in Carolina Forest, guys, now if you have a bad neighbor down there one day that's backing up against a wooded area down there in an undeveloped area, and the wind's blowing in the right direction, we're going to have a bad day. These guys are going to have a bad day. And so we know it's going to happen. Well, let's don't put it like that. But let's hope it doesn't happen. But it could happen, Al. It could happen. And the thing about it is, if you're more apt to have an accident if everything comes together and conditions are right. And in some of these areas, the conditions are right for fire, just any kind of trigger. And I know, Paul, when we were having the Barefoot fire, this is how bad it was. At Barefoot Landing, where the fire was down there, I was having sparks on top of my hotel to the point that I had to get up there with water hoses and keep it hosed, keep it wet, so it wouldn't catch my hotel on fire. Yep. And I'm 7 miles from the fire. 7 miles. That's the condition I'm talking about, Al. If that condition was to happen just right in Little River Neck, where the vegetation is very thick, and you have right in the middle of that, you have this high density development. You've created you've created a problem, and that goes back to what do we as a council and community leaders, we have to do the right thing, whether we like it personally or not. I've sat on this dais, and I know you have, Al, and I've voted for things that I didn't particularly care about, but it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. And the right thing for us to do here is those areas, i.e. Carolina Forest, Tidewater, and other areas, whether it's east of the waterway or west. Since this debate came online, I've had more comments from the Little River side than I have on the east side. So it's not just a problem there. But in these high-density areas, we need to come up with something that gives these guys something that they can write a ticket and say, you can't do that. If you do that, I'm going to write you a ticket, and if you continue to do it, I'm going to put you in jail. It needs to stop.
Question on that now. So let me ask this real quick. Can we enforce state laws right now without this ordinance while we are working on this ordinance? Can we enforce what's on the state laws right now through our fire and police?
Of course. Would have to be the police.
Pardon?
Would have to be the police, because that's a violation of state law, and fire department doesn't have the authority to issue a state law violation charging document.
But while we are working on this local ordinance,
Yes, sir.
if we have issues to happen, the fire department can call the county police and they can enforce the state law
State laws, yes, sir.
currently, today.
Yes, sir.
I got to get back to Paul here.
Okay, real quick, Chief, when y'all issue a burn ban, because it's real dry and it's real windy, how far can you go with that burn ban when you issue it? Countywide? So you have the authority to just say no burning anywhere for no reason when we issue a burn ban?
Based on atmospheric conditions as well.
Yeah. And can you do it in certain areas that is drier and windier than the other end of the beach? It's
Chief, could you come up here to the mic, so we got to get you on the tape?
We've tried that before, but it's difficult to enforce it because nobody understands where they're located at as far as is a ban for me or is it for somebody else. So it creates an issue with that going around. So we've elected to do countywide at the same time. And then the other part of that is if we do that and all of a sudden it says, well, it's raining in Aner. And so, well, why we have a ban over here and it's not raining in Little River area?
Yeah, there you go.
And so it's easier to do across the board because we don't know where it's going to happen.
But you could rain in Aner, but it's not in Little River and it's real dry and windy. You could say no burn ban.
You can do that again, but it's difficult to kind of measure that each day and what's going to happen today. Today, do we issue a ban just in Little River today? Then tomorrow we issue a ban in Aner. The next day we do it in wherever. You know, it's just so different. It's difficult to do that in specific areas at different times.
Hold on.
Telephone.
What's everybody looking down here at me for? Y'all expecting me to talk? I'm ready anytime.
Chief, what do you need, local or state, something that sort of fits in that plan of what I just spoke of a few minutes ago, in being able for this council to say, okay, we're going to go from Murphy Street to the inlet, or say we're going to go in Carolina Forest, Councilman, and take an area and say this is a no-burn area. What would you need so that you can enforce that? Would you need for the delegation to do it in Columbia, or would it be better for us to do it?
If it's done in Columbia, then it becomes a state law. Enrico, correct me if I'm right. And that becomes something that would have to be done by law enforcement unless we were given the right to enforce that. If it become an ordinance of the county, then we can enforce the ordinance of the county.
Well, here's my point, Enrico, Chief. With the lobby that the fireworks industry has and the money that they spend, if we could get a area by area ban on fireworks, we can certainly get this done. My goodness. And we're just talking about the areas that want a no burn. It's not like we're forcing something on people that don't want it. These people say, we want this. We want this in place. So what am I, recap for me? Am I hearing we need to get the delegation to do it, or we need to do it? I know I'm pinning you down, but I'm meaning to.
No, that's a novel idea, because it hadn't crossed my mind to treat it like a fireworks prohibited zone. That's established by state law. We have no law comparable to that dealing with open burning. And I would imagine that probably best to have that originate in Columbia, to give the counties the authority to treat it like fireworks prohibited zones, to set up a system like that.
All right, with your good legal brain, what's your thoughts on that so far as constitutional guidelines?
It would be similar to fireworks prohibited zones.
Okay.
If it would be treated the same, and I think that the laws on the books would be upheld constitutionally to deal with open burning as well.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible that we could maybe go in that direction?
Ask them and stuff to explore it.
I just talk in practice, because we discuss this a lot. I don't know that it addresses what you want to address. When we do the fireworks prohibited zone, it's that specific neighborhood. The complaints you are dealing with are coming from outside of the neighborhood. So, you know, it's areas adjacent to neighbors where we have issues with complaints. So if you're just getting a specific neighborhood, you're not going to address the properties that are 5-acre tracts or whatever around it where people are burning. Yeah. You know, we have issues, so to say, as far as the expectation. I think we had a controlled burn during one of our burning bans. Did we not? Forestry was doing it. And we were like, hey guys, we've got a burn ban. They didn't check. That was forestry. So, and then the Windsor Green fire, we never had a cause. It was they said maybe somebody on a four-wheeler or somebody else. So we don't even know if it was somebody truly intentionally burning brush. We try to be as proactive as possible when weather conditions warrant. I know Chairman Allen had one behind his house. We didn't have a burn ban going on. Humidity was relatively high, but the winds were up that day, and it went. So it's a challenge for us to try to catch it each time, and just because you got a burn ban doesn't mean people aren't going to burn something. And I know we deal with that each time we do a ban. Our firefighters are going out tracking people down, saying, "Don't burn, don't burn." So it's been tough for us, and the only issue I have on the nuisance side, it's always hard to determine what a nuisance is. We have some residents, if they smell smoke at all, it's a nuisance, and they'll call us, and we're out there trying to peacekeep among neighbors. So what you consider nuisance and I consider nuisance are definitely very different, and that's the challenge for law enforcement and fire, trying to negotiate those things. Was completely up to the discretion of the officer instead of something cut and dry. So it is an issue. I just want y'all to know some of the practical things we've dealt with over time and how we try to address it, because council brought that up, and I think we changed an ordinance when we did that to give a little more leeway on doing the bans. And we try to be as proactive as possible, but we're always scared to death we miss it, or, you know, did we catch it this time? And I'm emailing and texting the chief and everybody else, hey, you know, what about tomorrow? What's it looking like? So, yeah, it's a tough one. And we've got the interface all over. County just bought 3,700 acres, and a big part of the management of that property for our wetlands mitigation bank is going to be burning. That's why there's gates on International Drive. DNR burns theirs too, to control the fire load. So that, of course, generates a lot of smoke, but it also creates safer environment, and they do it for wildlife too. So it's a challenge.
All right, sir. And so let me go back to Paul here. So you weren't finished.
A question is ticket books. Does the Horry County chief, do we have anybody that has a ticket book to write tickets? That's under. Nobody has a ticket book. Why not?
Because the fire department cannot write them right now.
I understood you said you could
State
write
law.
a ticket.
No. County police can, under state law right now, correct?
Right now, there are ticket books in the hands of code enforcement. There are ticket books with the PD as far as ordinance summonses. And those could be distributed to the other authorized departments to issue ordinance summonses if we wanted to.
They are authorized to write tickets.
Ordinance summonses, yes, sir.
County,
So we need to
need to
get,
pass an ordinance.
we need to get that achieved then, so when we call it,
Correct. It would just be in violation of our ordinances, our code of ordinances. We have ordinance summonses. They're different from your blue ticket, your uniform traffic ticket, the UTT. They're actually white in color with carbon copies. But they're just for ordinance summonses, for violation of our local laws, not state law.
maybe I'm not understanding. If we're out there and we see a violation of a fire, and I'm there, can I call the Chief Tanner to send somebody out there to write a ticket? We don't have anybody in the fire department that can write a ticket right now?
It depends on what violation you're referring to, whether if it's a violation of our own law.
State violation.
State violation, we have the police
VHEC
department.
violation.
Police department can issue tickets.
Who can?
Police department, the sheriff's office.
So it's no need to call
Officers.
No need to call the fire chief and say send one of your guys out
They'd
here.
have to be commissioned officers.
Well, shouldn't we proceed to do that so we can have?
We have that availability currently.
We can do that, he's saying, if we pass a county ordinance pertaining to burning, then the fire department can issue those. But currently, they can only enforce state law through the county police, and they can issue a traffic summons, or whatever pertaining to state law. But if we pass a local burning ordinance, then our fire department, they can issue citations on that.
Okay, so we need to proceed with those actions.
Right.
So
Currently, to answer your question, we have to call the South Carolina Forestry Commission to come in and do that. They could do that because that becomes a state, they could issue a state ticket for that.
and I'm referring to backyard illegal burning and so forth.
That's right. Anything that's
So,
out there, the state forestry commission can be called in.
In the past, I think before Chief Hill became a chief, we have called, and the policeman has been out there and saw that it was violations, and they didn't write tickets. I'm just...
Chief Hill, and so you want to address that?
If I may, as it stands right now, if we respond out to a residence and someone is burning household trash, we can and will write a ticket. If it's in violation of state law, we can and will write a ticket.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Everybody in the county, we're on TV, they should hear this, be aware.
Probably did.
But that's not the problem.
But the other thing is, okay.
No, sir. And
Go ahead, Chief.
so if we're dealing with nuisance, in which Mr. Eldridge, had mentioned, it's difficult. We'd have to make a determination on the scene. We do that very often with other laws. So it's at the discretion of the officer. A lot of times we'll mitigate the situation by talking to the homeowner, putting the fire out, whether the homeowner can put the fire out with a garden hose, or we'll call fire rescue to put a fire out. If we deem it a danger, we can do that immediately. Absolutely.
Okay, that sounds, all right, the other thing is, Mr. Worley is the area, I think he and I are concerned, the same thing about the neck. I don't see any reason in the world you can't it's only one road in there, and then one road back out. You can put a sign up there, no burning, whether it's anything under 5 acres, you can't burn it, nobody can burn, or it's some sign or another. Put it up there for safety reasons. You can do that.
We'll explore that and stuff, and they'll get back.
There's no reason not to do that. It's a danger if you have a fire up front of the neck, and all these people in the back can't get out unless they go to the ocean or the creek or somewhere. Yeah, okay, that's my...
Councilman Vaught, so you've been standing by patiently.
I've been extremely patient today, haven't I? Especially since y'all told me I wasn't going to that I had a gag order on me, but at any rate, one thing that I think that has come out through this discussion and something that I've recognized a long time about this county is one law can't fit everybody in this county. This county's different from coast all the way out to where Al lives. You know, this county's totally different, and if we make a law that says, okay, you can't burn anywhere in the county because there's an area like the neck that Councilman Worley's talking about having a problem, then I think we're overstepping our bounds, and I think we're imposing a law on people out there where there's no need to impose a law on them. And I think we need to get really careful when we do this kind of thing because, you know, it's been tradition for years for people in the spring to trim up their limbs and stuff, find them a burn pile, burn them off. They tend to most of the time because people don't want their own yards burned down. They don't want their own houses burned down. And I know there's careless burning and stuff going on out there. But we can't throw one blanket law over this whole county that prohibits people from doing lawful things on their property. And I don't think we should make lawful things unlawful just because one area of the county it doesn't fit. So I think we've got to be really careful when we do something like this. Another thing, we originally talked about a burn ban east of the waterway. And we talked about it that way because that's where most of the density and population is in Horry County. Well, one thing that's happening, and everybody knows it, is that line, if you want to call it a line of population density, is moving westward all the time. We had, as soon as we talked about the intercoastal waterway being the boundary, people said, well, maybe the Walk-A-Mile should be the boundary. Well, maybe the PD should be the boundary. It's going to move, and if this county continues to develop as it has over the past since I've been here, that burning ban could extend all the way to the PD River. But I think we've got to be really careful when we do this. Another thing that has come up is, you know, we always have that law of unintended consequences. If we tell everybody in the unincorporated areas of the county that you can't burn your debris, your yard debris and stuff in your yard, where are they going to put it? Well, it's going to go to our convenience centers or to our landfill or somewhere where we're going to have to deal with it. Where if we allow them to deal with it in their yards, then it's gone. It's not a problem. So that's one of those unintended consequences things. Another thing, wish you hadn't started me now, don't you, Chairman? Another thing, under exemptions, vegetative debris is authorized by the South Carolina Forestry Commission, provided no nuisance conditions are created. Does that mean that I can call up the Forestry Commission and get certified or permission or whatever to burn? It appears to me to be that way by this particular ordinance. Another one is number 2. We talk about it being an exemption, preparation of food. Obviously, we want somebody to be able to fire up their grill in their backyard or whatever and be able to cook things, and we want them to be able to have a campfire. And so in my backyard, when my neighbors and I get together to burn our limbs and stuff for firewood that we bought, we've got a designated area and we pile it up and we have us a campfire. So who's going to say, well, I'm having a campfire in my backyard rather than I'm burning my debris? So I think we've opened a big can of worms here, and I think we need to consider a lot of these factors before we go ahead with any kind of a burning ban. And I'd totally be out of favor with any kind of a countywide burning ban. I think it's at best it needs to be selective somehow, and I'm not sure how you open that can of worms, because we talked about that when we talked about the shooting ban. You know, we said, okay, we're going to have somebody out with a tape measure 200 feet from this property line and so forth, and we got real complicated with all that kind of stuff. But I think this is something that we have to be real considerate of, is all of the different things that are going on in Horry County and all the different areas in Horry County that needed to be treated differently. Thank you for indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Of course. Councilman Crawford and stuff, did you want to say anything else and stuff, or are you just... Okay. Yes, sir.
To talk about some things Johnny just mentioned, we basically already have a law on the books, state law. And if we would enforce it, we could stop all this garbage burning, all this debris in a dense area because it's too dangerous. So if we do, the restrictions are already there. We need to talk about how to enforce that and get the laws on the books now and enforce them. And tweak it if we have to when we see the needs. Carolina Forest is very important for burning control because it's so volatile. It's just like murder. We need to enforce the laws that we have.
I concur. And so to summarize this, and so because we need to wrap this up. Question for Mr. Arrigo. Would there be some way constitutionally, and stuff as Harold said, that we could pass some sort of ordinance to authorize our fire department to issue citations on state burning laws?
The county does not have that authorization, or that power or the authority given by state law to do that. No, sir.
So then we could not just pass a simple ordinance authorizing our fire department to issue those. We would have to pass a burning type ordinance in order to give them authority to enforce what's in that ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Can you?
And it's already on the books. This is just an amendment to what's already we have on the books that was passed, I think, in 09, perhaps. Yes, 09.
Okay. Would there be any way that you could go back and pull those congested area maps up for us, represent that, so that this committee could see something along those lines, and if it be the committee wishes and stuff to send that back to you and stuff to give you a chance and stuff to kind of selectively go back through that and bring it back to us. Yes. With those, if
could pull it up now if you desired. I know you have to move on
though.
though.
To the committee. I would suggest and such that you do not send this to council right now because there's still so many points and questions and stuff. So if it be the committee members' wish and such to give you an opportunity to go back and draft and address these points.
To create or propose the creation of no burn zones within major residential developments. Is that what you would like me to do?
The committee? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
what can we do today to get the chief of police, they can start enforcing these laws? Do they? Where we can, if there's someone burning in Little River right now, in a barrel, and go out there and just write them a ticket. I mean, if you're speeding and you're over the speed limit, and 10 miles over, you're pretty well recklessly driving, and you write them a ticket. You don't say, oh, don't speed.
Yes, sir. We would go out and it would be officer discretion. We'd have to look at, investigate, and use a lot of common sense. If it's a barrel fire, as you indicated, and the fire's kind of gotten out of control, or neighbors have complained, it's excessive smoke, then officer can and will write a ticket or mitigate the situation. If it's trash, that's very easy. We can pick through the trash and see there's tin cans, milk jugs, diapers, whatever it is, and issue that summons. Yes, sir. Today. Yes, sir.
All right, then. With that said, and so we're going to have to move on.
Mr. Chairman, one quick question.
We got to move on, and so we've already covered the public input and stuff, and we've addressed it in some of the committees, sir. So we got to move on from here. And so we appreciate your input.
Where we can read the draft of what's currently proposed?
Yes, sir. And so I believe it's available online. Yes, sir. And so if it's online, and so if the Horry County Government
Give me that address.
website, and so if, some of our staff here and stuff will be glad to give
The
it to
other
you.
thing I would just simply ask, because we talked a lot about dense areas, less dense areas. The anecdotal evidence in the county has been that our catastrophic fires have been in relatively remote locations adjacent to large tracts of woodlands as opposed to neighborhoods. So I'd like input from the fire chief as to whether or not burning in, residential areas under controlled conditions is the threat, or whether it's wildfire in areas adjacent to those areas.
Yes, sir. And so, and we're going to address that. So thank you for your input.
Copy of the
Sir.
ordinance.
So here's a copy of the ordinance and stuff if you want to see it. Okay, looking for a motion to come out of the workshop and go into our regular public safety
Make a
meeting.
motion to come out of workshop.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda contents. Are there any additions or deletions?
So move to accept them.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, and stuff you've had the opportunity to review those? Look for a motion to accept.
Motion accept.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public input for this. Is Michael Simonelli, and so did I pronounce that right? So you here, sir, and so will you step up, state your name? You have 5 minutes and stuff. When the yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute.
I understand, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to speak here this morning. I have Mr. John Thomas with me as well from Reflections Condo in Garden City Beach. My name is Mike Simonelli, as I just stated. My wife and I reside at 1530 North Waccamaw Drive, also known as Ocean Towns, on Beach Access 16 in Garden City Beach. We are full-time residents of the county, and we have been for the past 3 years after moving from South Florida. We would like the Safety Committee to consider making Beach Access 16 a prohibited fireworks zone and extending it onto the beach to include 500 feet to Surfmaster Condo on our left and Reflection Condo on our right. Now I'd like to give some background as to why. As a young man, I was drafted into the Army in 1966. After basic training, I was sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and trained as a 13 Alpha 10, which is known as an artilleryman in layman's terms, on a 105 howitzer, use of a 50 caliber machine gun, M60 machine gun, and M79 grenade launcher. I was sent to Vietnam on Thanksgiving evening, 1967. While in Vietnam, I experienced many mortar, the optimum word mortar, rocket, and 75 recoilless rifle fire, especially during the biggest battle of the war, the Tet Offensive. I do know what ordnance sounds like. The fireworks on the beach, and the most popular seems to be the aerial bomb, which mimics a military 81mm mortar to a T. I hear a leaving a tube, and seconds a deafening explosion, same as the real deal. This occurs from dusk to 11 o'clock at night and thereafter. As a matter of fact, this morning at 12:28 a.m., there were 10 bursts of this type of aerial bomb on the beach. After enduring this for 3 years, my entire body and mind tenses up and wishing it would end before I lose it. Some of my Vietnam buddies call it symptoms of PTSS, as we all know as post-traumatic stress syndrome, bringing back the past. I already have one physical ailment attained in Vietnam and get compensated for. I really do not want to add that PTSS back to the Veterans Administration. Enjoying summer nights on our balcony are non-existent due to the bombs bursting in air. We retreat inside and blast our TV, which does very little but add to the frustration. We consider this cruel and unusual punishment. Our neighbors in both condos like Reflections and Surfmaster suffer the same fate and are frustrated as well with their quality of life and becoming shut-ins. In ending, we sincerely hope you can consider this request for a prohibited fireworks zone at Beach Access 16 onto the beach, just the same as was done for Max, the Shih Tzu dog, Bichon dog, in February of this year. Gentlemen, we are the epicenter, Beach Access 16, from all those people who are not allowed to shoot fireworks in Horry County. because we're the first one anybody coming southbound comes to. This is a nightly affair. I don't know how many of you guys have been in the combat zone. I'm living in it all over again. I really think that's unfair. The houses are also, so you know, the 3 beach houses are wood-framed, vinyl cladded homes. 3 are on the beach, and 5 are on the beach access directly. So I consider that a fire hazard because these amateurs don't know when the wind is blowing 10 to 15 knots off that ocean, it's blowing into us. And it's just incorrigible, really. I have nothing further to say. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And as long as you'll submit your fireworks prohibit zone application to our staff, we'll be glad to hear it and stuff at the next of public safety, and so we'll get things.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Moving for you. And so thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. You want to say anything? Could you say anything?
Can I say something?
Sure. You want to add to it?
My name's John Thomas. I live at in Reflections, 1520 North Waccamaw. I bought the condo in there about 5 years ago, but I've been in Horry County for at least 15 years. Okay. The problem I have is when the fireworks go up, there's a lot of debris that comes onto the property. Same way with the guys that actually clean the beach. I've talked to them, and every day they're cleaning. I forget what they call it, the scraper or whatever. He goes by, and it doesn't get close where the dunes are and the rocks and stuff like that. Now, the hurricane took out the rocks. I mean, it took out the sand, and we only have rocks, so we don't have the dunes anymore. But if the dunes were there with the grass, there's a possibility we have a lot of problems with there. But that's what I'm more worried about, because the building there's 3 condos next to me, and they're in pretty bad shape, and they're 2 stories. So they're going to go up to we go up about 80 feet, but we're also concrete. So, but our problem is we get a lot of debris on our balconies. So I know that there's stuff going there. That's what I'm really worried about.
All right, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And so, but again, if you get your applications submitted at the next Public Safety Committee, we'll have the hearing, and so we'll get you situated.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. All right, Miss Renee Hardwick, I hear you have a real nice little presentation for us for some dear old friends of mine.
We're all your old friends, Sal.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you. I would like to ask Richard Gerald to join me, please.
And his wife, and so if you need to ask his
come on.
young and beautiful wife, and
Yeah,
so if
we
I
should
can't
show
see
her
it,
off.
how he's got all this time in the county. Come on. So Deborah's so young, and you married up, Richard.
So Richard has decided he wants to retire for real. Richard retired one time before and came back part-time, and the county had a need, and we called on Richard, and as always, Richard stepped up. That's what he does.
Yes, he did.
Richard has served this county almost 40 years. Mr. Huffman and I cannot figure out why Richard doesn't want to stay till September to spend the rest of the 40 years with us.
That would actually be 41, right? I'm on year 40, right?
Oh, he's on 40, he says now.
Okay.
So, well, okay.
You do the math, I have time with
Okay, we
to
don't,
talk about it.
we'll be here all day if Richard and I do math. So, I just want to take a few moments to thank you, Richard, for the dedication and loyalty. Richard has been a great steward of the money of this county as we have moved forward with our radio project, which was a huge project. Richard held Motorola's feet to the fire, proverbially, so that we got what we paid for and that we didn't get taken advantage of, and he has set it up for us for the coming years so that we will not be taken advantage of in our maintenance. And I know that might seem like one thing out of 40, but it's a big thing because it impacts everybody in this county, not just Horry County, but all of the municipalities. And he has started something that we will be able to continue to do in a really good way, in a reasonable, productive, efficient way, which we could use more of that in our government always. So Richard started his career with EMS. Then he became Horry County Fire Rescue, and he went there. And then for a little while, he even worked over at the police department because he was in the communications section, and that kind of bounced around a little bit, and it ended up with 911. So Richard can truly say that he served in all the public safety of Horry County. And so we're going to present this to him and thank you for your nearly 40 years of dedicated service of Horry County. And we wish you a lot of luck in your retirement. We'll be jealous, but when we know that should we need you, we can still call on you. I made that an agreement earlier.
Amen.
So thank you, Richard. Yes. And Debbie, thank
I'll keep it brief. Somebody recently told me the two biggest fears is public speaking and death. So taking those two options, I'd rather speak today. But just to give you a little perspective, 4 decades have gone by, and I've seen a lot of changes. In 1978, when I come, there was 3 EMS stations. They just opened a 4th and put on what they call a transfer team. There was no rural fire department. There was no IT department. There was no internet, no cell phones.
Cable
so we
TV.
wondered how we survived. No cable TV. But over the years, of course, things progressed. And public safety was always my passion. I mean, the medical side, I started out with, it was actually ambulance service for EMS. Then it migrated a few years later, and we were governed by, some of you may remember Al, Mr. Chairman, an ambulance commission. Then later on, an ordinance was passed and we became EMS. And paramedic was my passion. I loved it. But through the years, I've got to serve in various roles, had a lot of support, and worked for several chiefs, several EMS directors, lately the police chief, and again, ended up with Renee. So actually a couple of police chiefs through the tenure. So it's been a good ride. It was without, I can't say it was without reservation. I put a lot of thought in it. And I'd often told my wife, after she retired, I was going to work maybe 1 or 2 years and come home with her. And the closer we got to the 2-year mark, the more she tried to convince me, hey, you really don't want to do this. So that may be a challenge, but, as of next Friday, I think I've got 20 more hours to do, and it'll be over. But, I really appreciate the support that this council, administration, other councils have given over the years. I don't envy your job. There's a big picture out there. We tend to look at it through our eyes only, so, you do a great job. I appreciate it. So I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I have to thank God for giving me the health and endurance to make it 4 decades. I thank my wife, especially in the earlier years when we worked all the holidays, and I was working 24-hour shift, and it was a challenge. But she put up with it, and we raised a family, and Horry County's been good to me, and I've tried to be good to them.
Thank you. Good.
Slide out. I've got a tree out I need to burn before y'all get going. I burned it on that 3 days.
Say just a really, really quick, word. And so I've been friends and stuff with him for, 30-some of those, 40 years and stuff. And I've worked a lot of calls and stuff. And I can honestly say this. There are very few people that I have known that long that have exhibited the type of integrity that Richard Gerald has.
Thank you.
He's a humble man. He's an honest man. He's a hard-working man. And he's always thinking about others' needs and stuff. And I appreciate that about him. And stuff. Ernest is here and stuff, his brother and stuff. And we've run, calls together and stuff, through the years. And stuff, the rescue squad, fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera. And they come from a very good family, and they have raised good children here. And so we appreciate you a lot.
Thank
Whole
you,
lot,
Chairman.
Richard. And
Thank
so you're going to be missed.
Goodbye. I'm going to burn that tree down.
Chief, will you follow him?
Picture. Richard, one more quick thing. So can we get a picture? And stuff you there with us? Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Richard. Y'all take care and have fun. Okay. All right, Deborah, and so you take him on a trip somewhere and y'all go have fun. There you go, God's country. All right. Good news does happen sometimes. All righty. Moving along here, Miss Kathy Floyd, is she here? So reference this grant. There goes Miss Kathy, way back there. And so can you make your way to the front, please?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm here presenting a resolution from the 15th Circuit Drug Enforcement Unit for council to accept, if awarded, from the South Carolina Department of Public Safety Drug Enforcement Unit, a technology specialist grant not to exceed $197,896. It's a 10% match, which is $19,790. The personnel cost for the grant is $84,736. The remaining of the grant is for equipment, software, and training for the technology specialist. This grant was written originally 3 years ago, in 2016. It has not been awarded. This is the third year submission, but it is the first year that I received a call from Department of Public Safety asking questions about the grant. The Drug Enforcement Unit, as you know, has they cover Horry and Georgetown County. They have a lot of software. They have a lot of equipment that has to be kept up. Repairs, they have to be sent. Equipment has to be repaired and sent off, and has to be operational at all times. We do not have anyone in our office that has IT background. Most of the DEU agents are the one who maintains this equipment. This technology specialist would perform duties relevant to the narcotics investigation, such as forensic extractions from the suspect's smartphones and other electronic devices to link multiple targets and drug trafficking organizations. They would also share this information associated with analysis with other local, state, and federal entities that work with our Drug Enforcement Unit to improve the ability and to help us to prosecute individuals in the drug trade. As you know, the world is ever-changing in technology, surveillance equipment, and maintaining this equipment becomes a challenge. The technology specialist would receive training in Celebrite. They would also be certified as a Celebrite expert after testifying in court. The technology specialist would make regular appearances in court. In the legal environment today, it's become increasingly difficult to get technical evidence admitted in drug trials and other trials without an expert. The volume of the technology evidence is increasing rapidly, and we would use this in data to help us catch other drug traffickers, and it would help us track others that have worked with them. We would also be able to get reports that our prosecutors could use in the courtroom. This grant was written at the request of our Drug Enforcement Board. They came to me 3 years ago. The board is made up of all the police chiefs in Horry and Georgetown County, our sheriff, and our solicitor. They saw the need. We're the only task force in South Carolina that doesn't have anyone, an IT specialist. They either have them in the sheriff's office, the police departments, or the solicitor's offices. And we're requesting this grant, which would be a 3-year grant, and it would have to be rewritten each year. and approved by the Justice Assistance Grants in Columbia.
Okay, as far as funding of it,
It's a 10%.
explain that to us.
Okay, funding, it's 90% funded by the state if it's awarded. 10% match would be $19,000. We currently have one grant that has a grant match of $16,000, which is a violent crime prosecutor and administrative assistant. That grant goes off this year. It goes off September 30th. The Solicitor Richardson is picking that grant up with state appropriation funds. The county, he's not asking the county to pick it up because we received money from the state to add additional prosecutors. Originally, 3 years ago, we did ask the county to pick it up, and the county approved the grant. But we are not asking the county to pick that grant up. It's being picked up through the state. We also currently have $994,000 worth of grants in our office, and the county matches $16,384 on the violent crime prosecutor. With this grant, we'd have a total of over $1 million if it's awarded, and that was done with the current staff that we have, myself and other members of the team. We have an attorney that assists me on when I have legal questions, but we write all of our grants, we maintain all of our grants, and so we're asking that y'all approve this grant if it's awarded.
I think the question was, do y'all pay the 19 or do we pay it?
Well, there's $19,000 already under the grant administration. If they do not pay it, Solicitor Richardson will try to find funds within his budget to pay it. But we have $16,000 that's being given to us by Grants Administration at this time on the violent crime prosecutor.
Recommend we send it on to council.
Mr. Chairman, I think also there's a question.
Sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Hubman.
After the grant, is the term a 3-year term?
And we're asking after 3 years the county pick it up.
197,000.
No, sir, only that $197,000 is equipment. The personnel cost is only $84,736 with fringes. The other, in each year, we write the grant, we'll be asking for additional equipment, updated software, training for our personnel at no cost to the county other than 10% match. So, of the grant, only $84,000 is personnel. The rest is equipment, training, and software.
So in 3 years, it then kicks in?
Yes, sir.
So nothing for 3 years?
No, sir, nothing for 3 years.
And then we would be facing
$84,000
permanently? Or
yes, sir, if you approved it.
What's the staff's recommendation on this, Mr.
My recommendation would be that the state funds be used for the match and to sustain the program after the 3 years.
And the county currently funds the drug enforcement unit. They fund a commander, a deputy commander, and an administrative assistant.
Is this type of grant we have to continue, council has to do after the 3 years, or you have to pay the grant back?
No, sir, you don't have to pay. If they do not, if council does not fund it after the 3 years, the position.
Got to speak in the mic and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So we could end it after 3 years, or we could continue it.
Yes, sir.
So I recommend we send this on to council.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It'll go to council. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Kathy.
you.
All righty, moving right along. So does anybody need a break and so where we roll on? Chief Tanner, employment model. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
I've got Assistant Chief Walker, Operations Chief, and Captain Nugent here to help me in case I lose my spot here. But what we did, back in March at our budget retreat, we talked about having deployment models, if you recall, and the way we do operation, how we change our operations around. What we are going to present to you this morning is the first 30 days of that deployment model change. It started on May the 12th. And the first 30 days was yesterday, June the 12th. On the second page of your document there It shows you what our current operational staffing is. It's 20 engine companies, 18 are staffed with BLS, which is basic EMTs. 1 is staffed with an ALS officer, a paramedic officer. 1 is staffed with a paramedic, that's engine 7. We have 4 squad companies, 3 are staffed with basic paramedics, 1 is staffed with a paramedic, 3 is staffed with basic EMTs, and 1 is staffed with a paramedic. 3 ladder trucks staffed with basic EMTs, firefighter EMTs, 16 ALS transport units, which is paramedic transport units, and 4 basic life support transport units is what we have currently today. This deployment model, as we told you back at the budget retreat, we ran it through our medical control, Dr. Martell. He was in full agreement with us doing this deployment model. We also met with DHEC to meet state regulations because, after all, they're the ones who give us a license to do our work, and we're in full compliance with DHEC regulations as well. We evaluate this deployment model every day between the folks who are running the calls and our EMS manager, who cannot be here today. He's sick. And we also run it through Dr. Martell to see if there's any issues we see popping up. Prior to May 12th, on page 4, we had 19 ALS staff transport units or ambulances. They had a paramedic and a firefighter on it, and we had 1 BLS unit. On May the 12th, we went to 16 staffed ambulances or ALS ambulances, 4 BLS ambulances, but 3 staffed paramedic engines. Now, there was a lot of talk that said that we took the paramedics away. We did not. We simply moved them from the ambulance to the engine. And we'll show you why here in a minute. The next page, page 5, it shows you how we were dispatched. This is pretty much the same way that we showed you during the budget retreat, how the calls come into 911 and when it's a minor incident, how they decide what units go. And after May the 12th, it shows you the same thing. We're sending the same units. The difference is now the paramedic is on 3 of the engines as opposed to being on the ambulances. And we'll show you the benefits here in just a second. The next page, we've run 30 shift days, have 720 hours of coverage. And the following page, you'll see we had 535 total EMS calls for service in these 3 stations. 450 of those required BLS intervention with basic EMTs, with 356 being transported to the hospital and 94 not being transported, which we have to get they sign a waiver to us, tell us it's okay, that they do not need to go to the hospital. Only 85 calls, 85 of those 535 calls of those 3 stations required a paramedic intervention. And only 77 of those 85 were transported to the hospital. And 8 were not transported and received a waiver. Following page, you'll see the 3 stations where we did these tests. And you'll see in Station 7, we had 180 total interventions or calls. 158 required BLS, 22 required ALS. Station 18 at Stevens Crossroads, 196 total. 161 were BLS, 35 were ALS. In Station 20, 159 total, 131 were BLS, and 28 were ALS. Now, what that simply means is that if you remember at the retreat we talked, that our data showed us we're running about 85% of our calls were BLS calls. But because all of our ambulances were ALS, we were transporting that time all back and forth to the hospitals. So the next page kind of tells a story for us. If you look, the ALS availability in the old deployment model, you'll see that we have the paramedics available. The increased advanced life support availability in stations 7, 8, and 20 were increased by 95 hours, which is a 75% increase in ALS availability. And what the graphs show you on the left-hand side was this was the time that the paramedics were available before. And now, on the right-hand side, the blue shows you how much time paramedics are available. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So we're having the availability of our paramedics available back in the district, available to respond to the true life-threatening calls more often than we had before. Now, what we've done by that, on the next page you'll see, We've increased the availability of advanced life support provided to respond to critical citizen need by average of 75%. We've reduced the need for required overtime by ALS firefighters by almost 50%, 49.4% in the first 30 days only. We will stop utilizing the rolling required mandatory overtime. If you remember, that was an issue we talked about during the retreat. June 23rd, we go back to a set day, a 6-day rotation for overtime. Now, what this simply means here, if you look at the number of hours here, where we at one point were looking at hiring 2 to 3 paramedics a day just to keep up, now we're down to 1. We're down to 1 to have to meet the schedules. We're utilizing now 2 peak load BLS transport units for the weekend. On Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. is our peak load areas. We're putting 2 additional BLS units in service. This weekend was the first time. Those calls, both those ambulances run over 30 calls this weekend, each unit, which gives us more paramedic coverage staying in those districts in the same time here. The only thing I will tell you, we're doing all of this for no additional funding. All that's coming out of our existing budget process right now. That's what we're doing there. We're also working on the availability of surge units we talked about in the budget retreat. We're working towards making that happen right now. What that would be is when we really get strapped for more ambulances, the battalion chief can simply call to add another unit in service here by taking existing firefighters in stations to put a BLS unit in service. So I think from what we see here, the first 30 days was a huge success. We'll continue on. We were doing a 60-day test. It's our goal, if it continues on this way, to continue doing these things and to come up with different deployment models as well, too, to see what we can do to keep being efficient across the county with our existing resources. And that's kind of where our 30-day report is.
It's outstanding, Chief. Well, so the numbers show it, and so y'all are doing a good job. Paramedics are on every scene, every call.
That's right.
They decide and stuff, what to do. But 85% of BLS calls and stuff, that is really significant and stuff. And y'all are not only saving money, but you're also saving lives and stuff because you're providing more ALS to every call.
And the important part is that the paramedic is on the scene, and the paramedic decides that Joey only broke his ankle, and he doesn't need my intervention as a paramedic. Right. So we send the basic EMTs back to the hospital with the patient, and then the paramedic goes back to the station where he's there all the time. But the other part, the thing that we're really gaining here is we're gaining experience for our basic EMTs, who in the past was a paramedic and an EMT on the ambulance, and the paramedic did all the work.
Right.
And then occasionally the EMT were allowed to do it. Now the EMT is building those skills up as they continue to move forward. So making a more well-rounded employee and a more well-rounded service for us.
That's super.
Mr. Chairman, this is great. Sounds like the fire department's really functioning great. How can we let the public know what a great job y'all are doing and the success you're having? Right now, there's a lot of negativity out there, and I just want the public to know that y'all are doing a great job. That we're hiring new firemen all the time. I mean, filling positions. We're trying to get everything where we don't lose firemen, where we can keep them and retain them. We need to let the public know what a great job y'all are doing.
We recently put out a press release, I guess it was last weekend, weekend before last, about this issue here. And that was before even the first 30 days were up. And now we have the first 30 days in our hands, so we'll be getting that out as well, too. I think Captain Nugent will continue to be doing that. And we receive a lot of phone calls and a lot of complaints because of the misconception is there are no paramedics coming to us. You're taking the paramedics away. We haven't. We've deployed them in a different way. And we're not the only people doing that. We're doing it here, which is very different. It's a different way of doing things, but again, we're proving to ourselves and to everyone else it's very, very efficient. And we'll continue doing that as we're calling people who call in, ask questions, we give them that information, and keep moving forward with it.
Good job.
Fire Chief, and one takeaway from the pie charts, and having the paramedic there to decide whether it's a paramedic call or a basic life support call, but the big takeaway from that is that 75% of the time, we're not sending that paramedic to even determine that, because we know, working with the 911 center, with the processes they go through, that 75% of the time increase in those 3 districts, that paramedic is there waiting or ready to go to a true paramedic call, not tied up on a BLS call as we were before.
Super. Thank y'all very much. If I can, I would like to move the sheriff up next because he has an appointment and such where he needs to get to and such. Sheriff Thompson, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and I'll be brief, and then we'll move on. Anyway, I just want to say the month of May worked out to be not, as hectic as last year's. If you remember, I came before you in June last year, and we had just completed the month of May, and we had several issues with the housing and with the numbers that we had out of the detention center. And with the courts, if you remember, we talked about that at our last Public Safety Committee meeting. So a lot of work went into preparing for this year, for the month of May. And things went extremely well. Now, our numbers was not a lot different than last year's numbers, but the process and the way it worked out came out pretty well. Today, at the detention center, we have 781 folks that are there this morning. Now, to give you an idea of how things are going, our average daily population in March was 695. Our average daily population in April was 707. Our average daily population for the month of May was 759. And that had to do a lot with the numbers that came in the month of May. We actually booked 1,503 people came through the process, came through processing, with 1,478 being released. We're still working with the courts and having our guilty pleas out there. Matter of fact, we did some this week. I think we did 45 Monday. We're working with the solicitor's office and with the courts, and we're going to be doing a new procedure called transfer court beginning next month, which should help tremendously with those numbers. But our courts worked over. They stayed until all the processing was done and everyone that could go through the system went through. So it worked out very well. I was complaining a lot last June. I'm not complaining today. Things went really well. As far as the sheriff's office itself downtown, we worked with and assist several agencies, North Myrtle Beach, Myrtle Beach. We handled the drag strip portion so that everyone else could concentrate. We worked with the county very closely, and the chief and I had met some during the weekend and over at Myrtle Beach with Chief Prock and Director Fernandez on a Friday night. I really think things went good, and as far as the potential of what it could have been. But everyone did a good job. The county police did a phenomenal job on a couple of situations. I'm sure the chief will brief you on all those. But it was a great success. You got our report there from the sheriff's office, from the detention center, on our numbers and what we've done. But basically, what I'm here to tell you today on our update that we do is things are going really well with us. And we appreciate the help and the assistance the council and staff provides with us. I had mentioned before about our 287G program, which is our partnership with ICE, with immigration. We kicked it off in the month of May 1st. We got our folks through training, and we got their information in their database, and our folks are working with it. During the month of May, we received 65 foreign-born folks that came through the detention center. Of those, 25 were released to ICE. In other words, the processing came in. It was determined that they were here, not here properly, and so ICE removed 25 in their system. We got 12 pending because they have local charges on them. Once those local charges are taken care of, then ICE would go with them. 24 to 65 were here legal. So that process worked out. And then we had 4 other ones that was released. Our SOAR program, which is what we work with the juveniles between 12 and 16 years of age. I've talked numerous times about what the SOAR program is. It's still working. To date, we've had 75 young people between 12 and 16 years of age that have gone through the program, and that program is working really well. We're getting more participation from that. And got 6 male just going to be going through the classes this week. So we got 6 officers that'll be graduating Friday, day after tomorrow, from the academy, and that'll leave us with 11 openings with a new hire date of July the 9th, which we have people on the list to be hired. Of the 11 openings we had, 4 people moved back, 3 went to work in the private sector. We had 2 medical personnel situations that left, and then we had 2 leave for personal reasons. So everything's going well. Thank you very much. Answer any questions that you might have.
Questions,
Can
Tommy?
I ask a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Paul.
Of the people that are sentenced in the detention center that can legally do, I guess, chores, works, or whatever, how many do we have there?
Our ones that we have that are sentenced with 90 days or less or 6 months with family court, I would say we have about 20. Now, this is an estimate, but I think it's really close, about 20 to 25, and they've been utilized in the detention center, working in the kitchen, working on the grounds, cleaning up, and working in the laundry and things of that nature.
But the reason I asked the question is I get this asked a lot. Why aren't the people in the jail, that way, why aren't they out there, doing public work, public services thing? And the honest answer I have for them is they're not, but just a very few that can even work, and that's the ones that are sentenced. Is that right?
That's correct. The ones that we work now, I don't know what you're talking about. They're out there doing the work. Well, our sentenced folks that we have, we utilize them working inside the detention center, inside the campus of it, the fenced-in areas where they're working laundry or they're working grounds, keeping it up, and working in the kitchen. I didn't follow what you were asking about other things that they were doing. We don't work people, we can't work folks that haven't gone through the court system yet outside the facility, like with public works or different things of that nature, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think my basic question I get asked is, why aren't they out there? They think that 700 people that's in jail are supposed to get out and work, and they don't understand that they have to be sentenced.
That's correct.
People that have sentences imposed on them, and they don't understand. We don't have but about 20 or 30 of those that we keep in our detention center.
That's correct.
And when they are working, but most of them you have jobs within the jail, and there's not any left that can go out and go up and down the road and, with public works and help those type things.
Or 781 that's there today.
Yep.
We probably got 20 to 25 sentenced. Everybody else is waiting for court or processing to get out. Get out.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you moving me up. Y'all have a good day.
Randy Webster, you still in the wings? Busy month for you,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. A couple things real quick for you. One thing on the agenda, we talked about the hazard mitigation plan progress report. It's just something I want you to be aware of. We do annually as part of our required FEMA requirement for our all hazard mitigation plan. So we have to do an annual update, just kind of where we are, what's going on with that plan. So really no real comments on it, just the fact that it needs to be made public for you to see, and it's in the packet for everyone else to see if they choose to do so. So that's what that piece is about. The remaining two topics I have, Sheriff did a great job summing up what Bike Weeks this year. Very excellent year for all of us involved. Numbers seem to be down across the board. Weather may have had something to do with that, but there may be other factors as well. We just don't really know. But I will say one thing for us in the unincorporated area, there was some exceptional leadership by administration and administrator. Get out in front of some of these establishments, what is really allowed to take place in our agreements that we have, and then with the Chief Hill and his staff going out and just doing that interaction with those groups, a lot of things were prevented from this year that we've had in the past. So I think that's excellent and needs to be brought out to the attention, because it did make for a very successful and safe weekend. And Chief Hill's group did an exceptional job in some preventive efforts as well. So just want to make sure everybody understands that it's a team effort. A lot of good things happened this year. And then we'll just see where it goes from this year on down the road. Great cooperation across the board, across the entire community with all agencies involved. And, it's not the first rodeo. Obviously, it's the fourth time we've done it as a group like that. So it's just like everything else. You get used to what you're going to do and move forward and tweak things as you need to go. So any comments on that particular topic? Excellent. Moving forward into the hurricane season outlook, just a couple things for you. Hurricane season is here, obviously. I don't typically like to talk about forecasts because we just need to be prepared for the one that will eventually get here again. But in the instance of curiosity, National Hurricane Center has predicted a relatively slightly above normal season for this year, 10 to 16 named storms, 5 to 9 hurricanes, and 1 to 4 major hurricanes. We've already had our first one of the season in the Gulf Coast area. Kind of hit us ahead of time. That seems to be a trend, but there's no, statistical data that says it's going to continue. That could be the last storm of the season. It could be the beginning of a major season. We just don't know. We've had some close brushes. I will say this, looking at it, the data, we're back into a cycle of very busy seasons. That happens about every 20, 25 years, so we're back into that again, where we had our lull there in the 90s, early 90s and late 80s, so to speak. Some of the things that's changed for the Hurricane Center for us to use this year on our decision making on the forecasting piece. Last year they did experimental modeling with expected arrival of tropical storm force winds. If you remember, there's a cone that had lines that said about what time they may get here. That actually becomes a fully operational piece this year to help us looking down as we're making recommendations on what to do about potential evacuations or what other preparations we need to make to activate for a storm. That'll help us with that. Also, the overall forecasting by the Hurricane Center as far as track goes of the center of circulation has improved and continues to improve. So the cone is actually about 50 miles narrower when you get out 4 and 5 days. What's it mean? Really, the big impact of that is where that cone lays is where evacuations pretty much are established. So if they can reduce the amount of area that needs to be evacuated because of that, that's about $1 million a mile in savings overall when you look at each mile that takes place in an evacuation zone. And that's, depends on the area, but it's very close average overall. So hopefully we may not have to evacuate under times that we may have had to in the past. We'll see how that shakes out. Storm surge modeling is also, watches and warnings will be established this year. What that does for us, it doesn't help us a lot in the decision making because we have to have that decision made well before that if we're going to evacuate or activate for the system or whatever the case may be. But what it will tell us is areas that we could really look at as potential inundation of storm surge, or how deep is that water probably going to get in the next 48, 36 hours. So while we may have picked zones A or A, B and C to evacuate, this will help us understand what areas may be truly impacted overall and what that could possibly be. Helps us in the downrange piece and how we're going to recover and respond to quickly after the storm. And finally, one thing you may have noticed this year, they're issuing advanced or potential tropical analysis advisories. Today and yesterday, they've shown where there may be a system that gets developed in the Western Caribbean that may move into the Gulf. It's not even there yet. It's really just modeling showing up down the road. Where that's going to help us the most, and this is one of the issues we've had over the years talking at the Hurricane Center about this, when we had the storms like Gaston a few years ago that spin up real quickly off the coast, and we don't get any advance warning until that happens, this would maybe give us a day or two ahead of time to say, hey, there may be a storm that's going to spin off in the the Gulf Stream, right off the coast of South Carolina, and instead of having 48 hours to get ready for it, we may get that extra day or so ahead of time before it actually materializes and becomes a hurricane. So it's very beneficial for us in planning ahead and moving forward, because it takes a lot of time for everything to get into place, obviously, as you well know, should we have to evacuate for an approaching hurricane. So that's it for me. Any questions? All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Robert Edge. Oh, you sitting here somewhere, sir? Give us a little bit of uplifting news.
Good morning. It's good to see everybody today.
Hey, Brother Robert.
I want to just briefly thank you for our cooler. We've got it in operation. It has taken a lot of weight off of us, a lot of pressure. We have desks that we don't have any place to put them now. We can bring them to our facility, and then that gives people time to wait and make a decision about what they need to do. And one other thing, Motorcycle Week I think was real great. Unfortunately, we had 2 fatalities. One was a gentleman who was in a bar and who was shot, and the other one was a gentleman who was evading the police. I can remember years ago we used to have 8, 10 a week. So this is a big relief to have them blow like this. And again, I appreciate the cooler and all the help you gave me.
Questions for the coroner?
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, sir. Miss Kathy, are you still here? Y'all need to update us a little bit on the solicitor. Y'all come on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Chief Deputy Solicitor Scott Hickson, so we're going to go to a meeting here where Jimmy is right now with a Chiefs meeting coming up a little bit. So thanks for the opportunity to get a chance to talk to you guys about what's going on in the Solicitor's office. I got kind of 4 main points that I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of. Specifically where we stand as a caseload here in the circuit. We have about 9,774 pending general sessions cases as of this morning. Georgetown County is right at the 1,600 to 1,800 range, and those are all general sessions felonies pending kind of right now. So when I first started doing this about 17 years ago, I guess, I think our caseload was right at a 5,000, right in there. We take in roughly 25 to 28 general sessions warrants a day. So to give you an idea of perspective of the caseload that we're getting, and those don't include magistrate court offenses or anything like that. Of course, the county police is our biggest warrant generator, and as you should be. And Myrtle Beach comes up. Those numbers fluctuate about 4,000 to 3,000 for Myrtle Beach, Chief Proc. How that's kind of relevant, I think, for you to be aware of a little bit of what's going on is the one big project we've been working on for quite a while now, and this is a digital evidence management platform. One of the colloquialisms they use is evidence.com. I don't like to use that, I guess, because that is a brand instead of a digital platform. And it's pretty revolutionary in that we're one of the few prosecuting agencies in the country that are trying to do what we're trying to do. And the result of it is the caseload that we have, and if you all recall, back when you generate a general sessions case, you may put the warrant package, the paperwork together, maybe a B&E auto might be 5 pages. Today, cell phone dumps are ubiquitous. You may get 5 cell phone dumps in a B&E auto case to figure out. Myrtle Beach, you may get 1 terabyte of milestone video from the video cameras that are, as you're all very aware of, trying to implement more cameras, more traffic cam, more of that. So the data is overwhelming. We have right now, and part of it was due to Judge John's order or potential order. Matter of fact, I got a text just now about where the status of the update is, so I may as well talk to you all about it. Right, as of now, we have 9 agencies online right now that are trained. Of course, the county police has been doing it for a while. The sheriff's office has been doing it. And we're kind of beta testing the program right now, which means we're not using all the cases coming in. We have about 500 of them currently in a web cloud-based discovery process. That includes body cams, dash cams, interview room with the county police, surveillance, cameras from a, say, convenience store robbery, officers' PDF reports, interviews. All of that will come through a digital platform and digitally provided in discovery to defense counsel. It's the same platform the U.S. Attorney is starting to look at using. No one else has tried to use it completely other than they use it for body cam management, but not for a digital file of everything that exists that's backed up cloud-based on 2 separate coasts. That's Amazon servers and secured servers, all CJIS compliant. As of now, the feedback we get from our office's training, the individual agencies, and if you care for rundown, Surfside Beach is on board, Myrtle Beach is up and running. County police has been doing it for a while, and we've been working a lot with the county because we're kind of under the same umbrella to make sure it works seamlessly. And the feedback from the officers have been tremendous in that I didn't know it was this easy, man. This is great. I only have to burn a disk and then store it. There's still a lot of issues to work out, but it looks like with all the lemons we've been given, looks like we're all going to be able to make some lemonade out of it and be pretty proud of where it is. So I'd be happy to ask more questions. It's detail intensive, but give you an idea what that looks like now. So ultimately, every case, for instance, the county police, we've done all the CID cases and have not done road officer cases yet. Coming up here next week, we'll be starting to take road officer uniform patrol cases in to see if that works, and then Myrtle Beach will be filling that in, and then we're just building it and see how it works, and then deploying it other places as well. So that's a little bit of what's going on with that. One of the focuses of the solicitor and myself have been maximizing the resources that we can, and so myself and David Carricker, who's the head of our drug prosecution unit, are both cross-designated as special assistant U.S. attorneys. And so I've been spending a fair amount of time in federal court in addition to state court to try to use every tool in the toolkit we can for specific violent offenders. So Councilman Prince, you're aware of the kind of the Loris Market situation. We've been prosecuting that in federal court, in addition to state court, in addition to that group of individuals robbed a post office across in North Carolina. So we're sitting at the table with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Sherry Lydon came to visit us with the sheriff to talk about it, have been promised increased footprint for that. So the solicitor can pick, take it to state court, take it to federal court to maximize pressure depending upon what we have. So if it's difficult to use in a shooting case, that's difficult to get him for an assault, then maybe I can send him for 20 years for a violation of a gun law in the federal system because I can't get witnesses to cooperate any other way. So that's a pretty interesting program that seems to be really paying dividends. The federal-state cooperation is the highest I think it's ever been. The FBI's footprint, ATF's footprint, everybody's on board to help. They see the need, and it's there's a lot of grass to cut, but it's positive. We got a sharp blades at least spinning on the lawnmower right now. The last little bit, I thought it was important for you to understand this about the transfer court program because it directly affects the jail population. State law provides for instance, we're scheduling guilty pleas right now for September. July and August, the courts are already full. We've already got them scheduled, and we don't have enough court time to. The funnel is this big. The court spigot on the bottom of the funnel is that big, and the water just can only come out so fast. We need a bigger more court time. That's the function of court administration. But transfer court allows for any offense that carries a maximum penalty up to 1 year, has concurrent jurisdiction with the circuit court and the magistrate court. What we have asked is to streamline, have the circuit court, Judge Culberson, Judge John, grant permission to the magistrates to hear this bundle of cases, and there are a ton of them, that we can put in transfer court for fines, for collection of more aggressive fine collections, for time served sentences for 45 days, or things to get that glut of cases out of the jail faster, inside 30 days, save jail costs, say all that, more fine collection, and not clog up a general sessions docket that takes 20 minutes per guilty plea, because it's an impossible task right now. So if that works well, we've talked to the magistrate, talked to court administration, everybody's on board. And And if that works well, it could revolutionize how quickly we can function these minor possession offenses, minor resisting arrest offenses. For instance, a forgery is a 6-month offense. Possession of heroin, potentially, if it's just a user, can get to a substantial fine and a 6-month offense in transfer court and go. And probation parole loves it because most of what probation parole does is bill collect. So it looks like it's a win-win. Keep your fingers crossed because we may get the jail numbers down faster if we can. But we have a staff member at the jail, Pierce Har, public defender at the jail. We've been working hand in hand. Terry emailed me twice about getting guys out today. So I thought I was in the conviction business, but I am in the jail population business too. So all things considered, there's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of good things coming forward, and I'd be happy to ask any questions you all have about any of this stuff.
Questions? Good job.
Thank you for your
Keep it
time.
going, so get those cases down. All right. That being said, I believe that concludes our reports. You had the departmental reports within your packets, and so if there are any questions or discussions on those. Do we have an executive session? And so if we do have an executive session, so it's time to look for motion to go out of this and go into executive session.
Make a motion, we go in executive.
Second, so moved. All right, we'll adjourn to executive session, be
Aye.
back out here shortly.
Aye.